Good morning, everyone. My name is Santosh Jumani, and I'm from Arcserve Support. Um, we still have a couple of minutes, so we'll just start off the presentation in the next couple of minutes so that we have some more attendees join in the meantime. Okay. Good morning, everyone. This is Santosh Jumani from Arcserve Support. The technical webinar for today is protecting Linux nodes with our product Arcserve UDP. To start off with, what the agenda for this presentation would be on how UDP works on the Linux platforms, what is the architecture of UDP, what are the front-end web services we use, a little on the internals of the Arcserve UDP for Linux, and then we'll quickly see how UDP works. We'll quickly demonstrate an installation, configuration, do a backup, and finally, the last topic would be for the enhancements with our latest update, update 4, which was released last week. So let's start off with the introduction. Now, UDP is a disk-based backup product that is designed for the various Linux operating systems which are available in the market today. It's a fast, simple, and reliable way to protect and recover all your business critical information. How UDP works is like we install a change tracking driver on all the Linux nodes that we would like to protect. And this driver makes a note of all the changes that are done at the block level, and this helps us in backing up just the changed blocks, ensuring that we get good incremental backups. And since we just back up the changed blocks, we have two advantages. One, it helps our customers to run more frequent backups at regular intervals, and it also reduces the backup window for each of the backups. And with Arcserve UDP, the backup that we've taken, with a single backup that we've taken, we can go ahead and do individual file folder level restores. We can perform a BMR as well. We don't have to take separate backups for a BMR for a file level restore. A single backup we can perform file level restores as well as bare metal recovery. So where do we store the backup destination? We have three options. We could use an NFS share or a CIFS share, or we could use the Arcserve RPS, which is the recovery point server, Arcserve UDP RPS server. Now, the Arcserve UDP agent, we install it on a dedicated Linux server, which we would denote as our Linux proxy server or the Linux backup server. We don't have to install the agent on all the nodes that we are protecting or all the nodes that we would like to protect. If we just install the Arcserve agent on the Linux backup server, that would suffice, and the approach would be a near agentless approach, which is fast and a very reliable way of protecting all the Linux nodes in the environment. This near agentless approach, it eliminates the need for manually installing the agents on each of the client nodes. And how do we manage from the LBS? What we can do is we can connect to the LBS over the network through a browser, and we can launch the UI from the browser. Coming forward to how UDP works, it's the simple 7 procedures, 7 lines we have here. The first step would be is to install UDP for Linux. Then we have to add the Linux backup server to the Arcserve UDP console. Arcserve UDP console in the sense like if in case you're having a mixed environment, a cross-platform environment with Windows and Linux machines, you would have installed Arcserve on Windows already, which would also have a recovery point server installed. We could use the same recovery point servers for backing up the Linux machines as well. So after we add the LBS, the Linux backup server, we would then add the Linux nodes that we want to protect. And once we add the Linux nodes, we're going to create a backup destination. As I said, we have 3 types of backup destinations available. We could use CIFS, NFS, and we could also use the RPS. And in addition, we could also go ahead and use the various cloud destinations which are available. The 5th step would be to create a plan, perform backup and replication tasks. If in case you have an offsite location where you would like to store your backed up data, we could perform replication between both the sites, replication of the backup data between both the sites. And the last step would be is to perform a restore or bare metal recovery if in case required. So it's simple. Install UDP, add LBS, add the nodes, add a destination, create a plan, perform backups, perform restores. Now, the ports used for UDP, Arcserve UDP agent, these ports need to be enabled on the firewall for the backup server. Backup server in the sense like it's our Linux backup server where we've installed the UDP Arcserve agent. We need port 22 open, which is our SSH port. We need the broadcast port 67 open. 8014 is our Arcserve UDP agent web service port. We need the UDP port 69 to be open, 8021, which is used for our backup service, and 8016, which is used for our instant BMR service. All these ports need to be opened up on the Linux backup server. Now, on the client nodes that we want to protect, what we need, the ports that we need to open are simple. Only one, it's the port 22, which is the port used by our SSH server. Now, if in case you're, using NFS and CIFS services to store your backup data, you need to open up the relevant ports for NFS and CIFS, the ports for which are actually documented in our guide. We could refer to them and open up the relevant ports. Coming to the architecture, we would have a common web UI interface. The interface could be from our UDP console or from our Linux backup server console. The web UI would contact the D2D server. The D2D server is our Linux backup server, which is shown in green, and that in turn would connect to all the nodes that we would like to protect, all the Linux nodes that we would like to protect. And all these nodes would have a connectivity to the storage, which it could be NFS, SAN, NAS, if in case you're using NFS or CIFS, or if in case you're using the Arcserve UDP RPS server, it would connect to the RPS server and store the data on the RPS server. Now, the machine which is shown in orange, that would be our bare metal recovery machine. If in case one of your production machine goes down and you would want to perform a BMR, the Linux backup server would initiate the BMR, and all the data from the storage would move to the BMR machine, the BMR target machine, and it would start restoring. Coming to the workflow. If we start concentrating on the backup workflow, in this figure, let's look at all the green directions, the green arrow marks. So if in case we're looking at the backup from the Linux backup server, we would go ahead and run a backup on the specific node, which would be the source node. We would initiate a backup, and from the source node, all the data would be backed up to the storage location, which could be RPS. RPS could be either dedupe or non-dedupe RPS, and it could also be NFS and CIFS shares. So this is how the backup workflow goes. When it comes to restore, let's look at the directions in blue. So the Linux backup server would send a request to the storage location to identify if it's available, to find out which backup session we can restore from. And once we collect all that information from the storage location, we would go ahead and send all the data to the backup server, which would then push the data to the specific source node where we would like to perform the restore. Now, the next part of the workflow would be for BMR. BMR, we have two internal processes. Like, one would be for connecting to the recovery point, and the second one would be for the BMR internally, what happens on the target node, on the BMR target node. So let's first look at what happens internally on the target node. So when you install Arcserve UDP, you would be, you would generate a UDP live CD, which would have a slimline version of the Arcserve UDP product, which would be a bootable ISO. So if you boot up your target node, your BMR target node with that live CD, you would get an IP address which would be assigned to that specific BMR target if in case you're having DHCP in your setup, or if not, you could also go ahead and give it a manual IP address. Now, once the IP address is generated on the BMR target node, what we could do is from the Linux backup server, we could specify the IP address, connect to the storage location, browse for the recovery points, and then go ahead and perform the BMR for that target node. This is in general the workflow of how UDP works. The next topic would be for the front-end web service and Tomcat. Now, as I said, we could access the Linux backup server or the UDP console from a browser, and we could use Internet Explorer, Firefox, Chrome for the other various available browsers. These browsers, what they would do is it would send an XML HTTP request to the UI server, which in turn uses Java for XML web services. It contacts the web service. It ensures that we have a job schedule in place. We have the configurations done. All the configurations and the job scripts are stored on the database, which is an SQL-like database. And we also have a monitor service, which ensures that if that specific time has reached, it's going to trigger the backup jobs, and all the backup jobs are backup, restore, replication jobs are all triggered using the command line in the backend, and we have the various job subprocesses generated. We have three kinds of job subprocesses. One is a backup process, one is a restore process, and one is a BMR process. Now, the BMR process includes even the instant virtual machines here. So, coming to the next part of the presentation, which is installing UDP for Linux, you have a download link shown on your screens. You can go to that link and download the latest version of UDP for Linux, which is 6.5 update 4. And you also have a direct download link, which actually goes ahead and downloads the binary file for the Linux platforms. Now, once we have actually gone ahead and downloaded the binary file, we would go ahead with the installation. So before looking into the installation, there are some prerequisites which we should ensure is installed on your machines. First is the SSHD, the SSH daemon. We need to ensure Perl is installed. The optional are MKISOFS. Now, MKISOFS is actually required for creating the live CD. The live CD is the bootable BMR CD that we provide if in case you want to perform BMR of certain physical servers that you're protecting. And if in case you're using CIFS and NFS as your backup destinations, you need to ensure that mount.nfs and mount.cifs are installed, and you should also ensure that the rpc.stat service is also running. And the next part is the demo. So what I'll quickly do is I'll change my screen to the demo screen here. So this is a fresh Linux machine that I have just installed. So once it boots up, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and transfer the binary file. Now we can transfer this binary file through WinSCP. Okay, so the machine is up, and this is a minimal install of Linux. So let me just quickly log in. Okay, so the IP address for this is 10.60.10.194. What we would do is quickly open up a PuTTY session. I hope this is better visible to all the attendees. Okay. Ten sixty 10.194. Okay, we'll go ahead and transfer the binary file to the arc install folder that I have created. While this gets copied, I'll quickly go ahead and just install a couple of tools here. So the ifconfig works now after installing NetTools. Okay, the file has been copied. So let's come to the location where we have copied. Let me actually just minimize this so that it's visible clearly. All right, now if we see this binary file does not have execution privileges, so we'll first go ahead and give it execution privileges. All right, and we'll go ahead and run the binary now. When I run this binary, I would also see that it would ask for Perl to be installed because I have not installed Perl. This is a very minimal install of CentOS. So once I go ahead and execute this, when it checks for, yes, you can see instead of asking, it's asking for Perl, it's asking for mount, and it's asking for Gen ISO image or MKISO FS. So what we'll do is we'll quickly go ahead and install the prerequisites. It's going to take a minute. Okay. Great. So let's go ahead. Okay, the NFS file locking function does not work if in case we don't have that. That's okay. Yes. In addition to all these, if in case you're planning to perform file level recovery of agentless backups, which is I have not yet discussed so far. The host-based agentless backups works differently, but if in case you are planning to use the host-based backups, if you're planning to perform file level recovery of host-based agentless backups, we do require an additional application called MDADM to be installed, which we would install it at a later point of time if in case required. So we'll continue with the installation process. Quickly skip through the installation notes. So what exactly happens is that we use the temp folder to extract the packages and install the Arcserve UDP agent. So while this installation goes on, we can actually go ahead and use one of the machines that I've already have in place. So on the ESX server that I have, you would see that I have an LBS already installed up and running. That LBS has an IP address of 13.35. We'll quickly connect to that. Yes, and Arcserve would get installed in the default path here. So we'll go into the D2D server, and here we can see the Arcserve this is the Arcserve installation folder. The rel version gives us the information about the version of UDP installed. The version of UDP installed, the build is 4175.1223, which is UDP 6.5 update 4. So once you have Arcserve UDP installed, the most commonly used folder would be the binary folder for us, because that's where all the binaries would be stored. Just to quickly run through a couple of binaries while the installation is running on. Oh, okay. Let's just quickly get back to the installation. Here we can see that it has created the live CD, and Arcserve installation is done. It has created the live CD, and all the ports that have been mentioned need to be opened up. For the ease of demo, we do not have any kind of firewall here, so all these ports would be opened up by default. Now, the next thing is registering this UDP Linux backup to Arcserve UDP. Now, as I had clearly mentioned in the beginning of the presentation, that we would access this Linux backup server in two ways. One is through the Linux backup console, LBS console, or through the Arcserve UDP console, which we would have already installed on our Windows Server editions. So now this machine that we see here is my 2016 server, which has got Arcserve for Windows already installed, and we have the Arcserve Windows UI up and running here. So what we'll do is we'll quickly go into the resources, and we would see the Linux backup server, which is my old backup server that I have registered, but now we are installing it on LBS2. Now LBS2, it asks us that if in case you want to go ahead and register this to the Arcserve backup, Arcserve UDP server, I would go ahead and say yes. It's asking for the UDP server name. I'm going to, before I do that, I just want to quickly ensure that I have updated the host file with the IP address of the Arcserve console. Ten 1060 1244. So I'm going to update it with the FQDN and the short name as well. quickly save that file. So this is going to be UDP win2k16-01 username administrator, the password, port number is default is HTTPS protocol. Just takes a while to register. Yes, it is starting to register. And yes, this backup server has been successfully registered to Arcserve UDP. So let's quickly go back here and just hit a refresh. You could see the newly added Arcserve LBS server LBS2 in the Linux backup server groups here. Now, this is the basic installation of the LBS, the Arcserve LBS. Now, the server has been started. The service is up and running. Great. So we'll quickly go back here. We'll go into the binaries and okay. Now just to how to just quickly go ahead and check up if the Arcserve's UDP server is running is just to issue this command d2d server status. Yes, it shows that the Arcserve UDP agent is up and running. Now, if in case you have not installed the MKISOFS or MakeGen Gen ISO image, if in case you've not installed them, not a problem. It would not create the Arcserve live CD for you during the installation. But if you see this utility here, which we have provided, the config utility, that would help us to go ahead and create the live CD after the installation. So with the help of config utility, ensure that you have MKISOFS or Gen ISO image installed and then run the config utility. Since I've already installed it, it just says that it's already installed. Do you still want to go ahead and create the live CD again? I would say yes. Now it's asking for the path of the package. Now, when we install Arcserve UDP, we have a restore utility ISO which we provide. So we'll just quickly search for that. It's usually in our Arcserve D2D server packages folder. Yeah, this is the live CD. Okay, CD installation. Yes, here we see the UDP restore utility. So we have to provide the path for that. Before actually going and doing that, we'll just go one level up and we see the UDP live CD already being created. We'll just go ahead and rename that. So that we can see that it's being created again. All right, so we go installation pwd. So you can see that it's installing the restore utility package. It will create the live CD once again for us. So coming back here, I have the LBS2. What I'm going to do is I'm going to protect this Linux machine called UDP U4 node. So let me quickly log in here. This has got 1060.10.229. So here we can see, yes, the restore utility, after providing the path for the restore utility ISO, the live CD has been created again for us, and it's available under D2D server packages. So we'll quickly go on to the packages folder, and yes, we can see the original live CD which was created during the installation, and this is the live CD ISO which is created after the installation using the config utility. So coming back to the binary folder. Okay, we have a lot of binaries available here. The D2D reg binary helps us to register the Linux backup server to the console, the Windows console, the UDP for Windows console. This binary helps, the D2D restore file binary helps us to restore individual files and folders. This restore VM helps us to perform the instant VM uh, process, the instant VM restores. And we have restore volume, which helps us to restore volumes, make live CD. D2D verify. D2D verify is like to verify if the recovery point is usable for a restore. We have the D2D util. Now, this specific utility which we see here, D2D util, helps us in encrypting passwords that we would be using for uh, the various operations like adding nodes and things like that. So how this the UDP util works is pretty simple. Util space encrypt, and you hit enter, following which you type in the password that you would like to encrypt, and here you would get the encrypted password. Now this could be copied into one of the files called the password file. We can create a password file and use this. So what we are going to do is just go ahead and I'll just create a folder called templates so that it makes it easier for me to. This is the password file that we have created. Just on the node here. Okay. On the Linux node that we want to protect, this is the IP address. And we'll go ahead and add this using a command line. We'll add this server, this Linux server, the Linux UDP U4 node to the console. We'll quickly go ahead and go back in here. LBS server, CD binary. /d2d node. Now, this gives us the various arguments and switches we could use with the D2D node. So hyphen add equal to quickly go ahead, add this here. So the switch to add the UDP node hyphen user. Here, what I have done is I have a default user called Jumani. And here, what I'm going to do is specify the password file, which would be opt arcserve d2d server templates pwd file. Now, when I go ahead and add the node, I am pretty sure I would get an SSH invalid key because I have not generated SSH authentication currently. So we'll go ahead and see that. We'll also see how to generate the SSH key. And okay, what we'll do is it's showing throwable egg. Okay, not a problem. We'll come here. We'll minimize this. We'll try to add this to the other LBS server I have here. Okay. 10.60.13.35 is the IP address of UDP u4-node -user equal to Jumani -pwd file, which is opt Arcserve d2d templates pwd file. Oh, pwd file. Okay. Just give me a minute. Yes. SSH copy ID -I. This is the SSH key that has been generated, and this has to be copied over to Jumani at UDP u4-node. Are you sure? Yes. Okay. Okay, we're still not able to add it through command line. Not a problem. Let's come back here. Okay. It says that this node cannot be connected. The LDPS2 node cannot be connected. Okay. What we'll do is add a node, add a Linux node here. UDP u4-node given root and add to list. So when we come here to Linux nodes, we can see the most recent node that we have added into the console. The next thing would be is to add this to a backup plan so that we could go ahead and back it up. Since I already have a plan here in place, what I'll do is go ahead and modify the plan so that I could just add this node in and we could go ahead and start taking a backup of it. UDP node. Okay. The destination is a dedupe data store DDS1, which resides on the local machine, and the backup schedule runs at every day night 10 p.m. I'm going to have 7 daily recovery points and 4 manual or custom recovery points. And if in case we have certain scripts that we need to run before and after the backup, we could go ahead and use them here. So I'll quickly go ahead and save the plan. It's going to deploy the plan now. Perfect, all the nodes. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and quickly back up now. Since this is the first backup, even if I select incremental, it would go ahead and run a backup, run a full backup. Okay, we're getting some kind of exceptions here. Coming back here to the plan. Okay. Just quickly try if in case it's not working. Great. Okay. Now, if we'll get on to the other nodes that we have taken successful backups of, like if in case you can see here, this is one of the nodes where I've done backups. I've also started an instant VM. It all looks great. So what we'll do is we'll quickly go to the procedure on how to perform a restore. So when we right click here and go ahead and click on restore, we would have the restore manager opening up. And here you could see that the first pop-up which comes here is for if in case you want to perform a BMR restore or if in case you want to perform a file level restore. I'll go ahead and select the option of a file level restore here, click on OK. Here you can see that it's going to give me the LBS server, the Linux backup server node. I go here, this is the RPS which is registered, and I can see all the nodes that have been backed up by this RPS. So I'll go ahead and choose LNSB, which is one of the nodes, and we'll go ahead and do an incremental backup from the backup which was taken yesterday at night 11 p.m. When I click on add, it's actually going to give me a mount point, amount of all the backup destinations from which I could go ahead and select um, what files need to be restored. So, okay. I just want to go ahead and restore that one file. You can see that it's added here in the list of files and folders that need to be restored. Click on next. Where do I want to restore it? I want to restore it to the original location or to an alternate location. I'll go ahead and give in the alternate location, specify the credentials, and I'll quickly browse. What we'll do is we'll go ahead and save it in temp. And here is the job name. Click on OK. We'll go into the activity log. Here you can see that it's being successfully restored. The same would also show up on the UDP console. Now, when we actually go ahead and right click on the node and perform a restore, what we have noticed is that it contacts the LBS on port 8014. So this is the LBS console on which we are performing the restore, and the restore status gets updated on both the LBS console as well as your Windows Arcserve UDP console. So let's quickly get on to the server. Oh, sorry. We'll quickly go back here. We'll go into the temp folder. We created a test restore folder. There you can see that the file has been restored here. Now, this is the file level restores. Now coming up to a BMR restore, what we have to do is, if in case we are performing a BMR restore, the first thing is we would have to bring up a virtual machine with the live CD. So I'll quickly go ahead and create a virtual machine here, call it BMR live test. And since I'm going to do a BMR of a CentOS machine, I'll quickly go ahead and select CentOS 64-bit. I'm going to select the data store. Okay, I'm going to give it only one CPU with 2 GB of RAM. And okay, before we could do this, let's quickly check out what is the configuration of one of the nodes here, so that we could give in the same configuration. Say if you're going to do the restore of LNSB, it's got a single hard disk of 20 GB. So we'll come back here and I'll give a 20 GB hard disk, give it thin provisioning, scroll down, select data store ISO. Here, update for UDP live CD, select that, click on next, and finish. I have the BMR live test VM created, it's not booted up, so I'll quickly start it, and we can see the server starting up here. It's currently talking to my DHCP server to get an IP address for us. So yes, great. So we have the IP address for this BMR target node, and the IP address is 10.60.13.233. Now I can perform BMR using two methods. One is through the console of either the LBS or the Windows Arcserve UDP console, or I could also use the console of this target node. Now, as I told that our live CD has a slimline version of our software, we could also go ahead and perform a BMR from this IP address itself, 10.60.13.233. So what I'll do is I'll connect to the console of this BMR live server, 10.60.13.233. The port I'm going to use is 8014. And I would be presented here with the, okay, so now what I need to do is add a backup storage here. Now, since this target node does not understand where I have backed up my data from where we are going to do the restore, so I'm going to go ahead and select it as RPS, and I'm going to give it the RPS host name. Now, since this is the target node, I'm pretty sure even it would not be able to communicate with the host name. So what we can do is quickly hit enter here to go into the shell mode, edit the host file so that we could go ahead and add in the IP address 10.60.12.44. Let me quickly confirm that. 10.60.12.44. Yes, 10.60.12.44. UDP win 2k16-01 .udp.local, or give the short name also win 2k16-01. Save the file, exit, come back to this prompt, and we'll go in here and specify it as UDP win 2k16-01 administrator, given the password, select the protocol as HTTPS, and when I click on load, okay, failed to connect to RPS. Okay, we've given the IP address here. Ensure that the password is correct. Okay, it's found the data store DDS1 where our data resides. So we'll go ahead and add the backup storage here. The backup storage is listed here. What we'll do is go ahead, click on restore and click on bare metal recovery restore. So you would see that I'm not using the Linux backup server to perform the BMR, but I'm actually using the target node, the live CD for doing the BMR here. And I have connected here to the recovery point server, and we'll go ahead and perform the bare metal recovery of this node LNSB. I'm going to do here, and here the latest enhancement which we have in update 4 is to exclude the exclude the volumes that we want to go ahead and do the restore. If in case you're having a huge server where you just want to bring up the server first, bring up the OS, and later restore the file server, the data, or whatever it is. So in that case, you would see an option here. So since these are all the system volumes, we don't have an option to exclude anything here. But if in case you have a specific, a volume like data or U1, if in case you're using Oracle, you could exclude them. You would have an option here to exclude those volumes and go ahead with the BMR. So the enhancement with update 4 is exclude volumes in the BMR, which is covered. And we go next. I'm going to give the IP address which we saw on the screen here, 10.60.13.233. 10.60.13.233. Okay, I'm going to give the host name as UDP U4-LNSB is the original name. I'm going to add BMR at the end. I'm going to say yes, use DHCP to get the IP address. I'm going to click next. Yes, this is the job name. So I'm just going to quickly check. It's going to connect to this server. It's going to connect, the machine node is this. And yes, the target machine node is this. Submit. Here you would see that the target node is coming up. It's connecting to the target node. It's going to wait for the node to start up. It's creating the disk layout now. So when you actually come here, you will see nothing because all this is happening in the background. And once the restore is done, it would reboot the BMR machine automatically. Okay, the BMR has failed. Okay, it's got EFI, so I'll have to adjust the target node machine from BIOS to EFI. Okay, great. Come back here, and we'll quickly go ahead. LNSP. Power it off. Yes. Edit. Okay, VM options, boot options, EFI, save, start it up. So if in case we get a different IP address, we'll go ahead and use the new IP address for, okay, it's the same old IP address, 10.60.13.233, great. So what I'll go ahead and do is quickly run the BMR again. Okay, it's just refreshing up here. Not sure if the RPS is added, so we'll quickly go ahead and add it up again because we rebooted the machine, the BMR target machine. Okay, administrator, the password, it's going to use HTTPS load. Okay, great, connected to the data store. Going to use the BMR connect. LNSP, going to recover the machine from the latest backup, which is from last night. I'm going to use the IP address 10.60.13.233. I'm going to give it the name UDP-U4-LNSB-BMR. Click on next. You'll submit the BMR job again. Okay, it's connected to the node successfully. Started to create the disk layout. Okay, it's restoring volumes. There we can see the BMR has started. So while this restore goes on, I'll quickly switch back to the presentation so that we could go ahead and cover up the presentation in the meanwhile. So the demo is done. We've done a demo for backup. We've done a demo for file level restore, and we've also done the demo for a bare metal recovery restore. Now, a lot of questions may come in your mind regarding how the changed block tracking driver sits, where does it sit. So let's look into that. If in case, when the D2D driver sits in between the file system and your system block driver, what it does is, from the file system, we have both read and write requests which go to the system block driver. Our D2D driver just makes a note of all the write requests that go in and makes a note of all the blocks that are being modified. And this helps us to ensure that we back up the correct incremental, the correct blocks that have changed from the last backup. Now, when we do this, um, we actually have the driver D2D CTL, which gets installed on the Linux nodes. That is why we say it's a near agentless approach. It's not a complete agentless approach, but it's a near agentless approach because our driver sits on the uh, remote nodes, remote Linux nodes that we want to protect. So it captures all the right request and makes a note of the blocks that have been changed, and in this way we are able to do the incremental backups. Now, the snapshot driver or the D2D CTL gets installed not when I add that node into the console, or when I add it to a plan, deploy a plan. It does not even get installed then. It gets installed when we actually first go ahead and trigger our backup. Our first backup is triggered. That's when it gets installed. And to query the driver if it is loaded or not, we could go ahead and use the lsmod command, and that would show us if the D2D driver is loaded on the machine or no. Now, here in this screenshot, you would see the D2D SSBD1. That's our snapshot device. That's the device which has all the information about the changed blocks. And what we do is, on this snapshot device, we perform a COW operation, copy on write operation, and go ahead and transfer all the changed blocks to the RPS. Just a quick, recap on the various command line options we have. The config utility, as I had explained it earlier, it helps us to generate the live CD. The D2D AR, the assured recovery module, it helps us to run assured recovery tests. We can create a template for the assured recovery tests template, and we can give in various parameters that would be required for the assured recovery, or the IVM, or the BMR. And you can then execute the D2D create template. It will create a template, and then we can also go ahead and perform the IVM, BMR. These are a few command line options that we'd already discussed. Now, coming to the update for enhancements, we have new platform support. We've added Ubuntu 18.04 LTS version. It does require a new driver, so we prepared a new driver for it. We have added support for SUSE Linux Enterprise Server 15, which also requires a new driver. The Red Hat CentOS Oracle Linux, Oracle Enterprise Linux version 7.5 and 6.10 have been added, and we do not require a driver for them. The old drivers work on the newer kernel updates as well. And then what we've done is the sudo enhancement to our update 4. It's not like we did not support sudo enhancement earlier, but yes, we did. But here with update 4, we've restricted a lot of the sudo commands which the users can use. or your backup admin could use. With update 4, we also support secure boot. A lot of machines today have got this option enabled of secure boot. It ensures that we boot with legitimate operating systems provided from the various OEMs. So we have added support for secure boot. We've added support for excluding volumes during the BMR. We've added support for excluding volumes during IVM. But to exclude the volumes during the IVM, you have to do it from the command line and not through the GUI. So that's where we actually go ahead, create a template, and in the template, you would have an option which says exclude volumes, which I would quickly go ahead and show it to you guys now. We've done an IVM enhancement to reduce the system boot time. With the older versions, we used initd, but now we use systemd in the latest versions of Linux. So it reduces the boot time a lot more when compared to the older versions. And we've also extended support for the SMB versions 1 and 2 for the Microsoft Hyper-V hypervisor, and we've also added support for 2016 hypervisors. We've added Korean language UI support in the Linux backup server alone. And if in case you're having a UDP appliance, the Linux backup server which comes on the appliance is a version 6.6. So now with update 4, we upgrade the Linux OS from 6.6 to 7.5. I'm sorry for the typo there. It's 7.5. And the NFS share protection is also enabled. NFS share, like a normal, if in case you have any kind of normal NFS shares, we also enable you to protect them using the share paths. That's done with the presentation. Let me quickly just go back here to the BMR. Yes, it looks like the BMR is successful and the machine has started up. So let's quickly come here. There you see the BMR live test. It's up and running. I'll quickly log in here. Okay, great. And we'll just check the host name. You can see that the -BMR is added at the end of the machine name. So this BMR is successful as well. So that's the end of the presentation from my side. Let's quickly open up for any questions from your side. What you could do is go ahead and type your questions on the chat window so that I could answer them. Okay, I see a couple of questions here. Okay, the first one is, does Arcserve support mainframe Unix? No, we don't support mainframe Unix platforms as of now. And the next question we have here is, if the SSH port is not default, how can we back it up? If in case you're not using the default SSH port, it's okay, it's fine. Then you have to open up that specific port. If in case you're using, say, port 30 for SSH, you have to open port 30 up on your firewall so that we could use SSH and connect to the Linux nodes that we want to protect. Then okay, do we have a question here which says that do we have an option to run any of these binaries from the web console? No, the binaries have to be run only from the Linux backup server. And we have another question here. Do we support Solaris? Does Arcserve UDP support Solaris? Solaris, as of now, no, because that comes under Unix, and this is mainly concentrating on the various flavors of Linux that are available in the market today. All right, I see another question here which says that do we support Lotus mail server? Since we are taking backups using snapshots, we do support backups for applications, provided during the backup we can put the applications into a safe mode. Like, for example, if I take Oracle, if in case I can put Oracle in a backup mode, I can go ahead and take application consistent backups of the Oracle database. So in that thing, I would go ahead and use some kind of scripts which would put the database into backup mode before the backup runs. In the pre-script and in the post-script, I would go ahead and in the postscript, I would go ahead and release the release the database from backup mode, so that in this time, whatever gets written onto the database, it goes into the redo logs, and your database is intact during the backup. In this way, we ensure database integrity as well. So if in case you have an option to put the Lotus mail server in some kind of backup mode using some kind of scripts and release it from backup mode at the end of the backup, then yes, you can also go ahead and do application consistent backups of your Lotus mail server. Okay, I have another question here, which is actually requesting to explain instant VM on Amazon EC2 and Azure. Since I have only a couple of minutes left, I would go ahead and keep this topic for the next presentation, which we would do. I think that's it. That's it in the questions I see there. Okay, I have one more last question which has popped up. For BMR, can we use the live CD from the backup server Linux or to do the BMR for all the nodes, or must be used live CD for each node? Okay, no, the live CD that we have created is sufficient enough for almost all the available platforms and flavors. But if in case you have any issues, or you would like to have a live CD for specific versions of or specific flavors of Linux available, yes, we could also go ahead and use those. We can create live CDs for different OS versions as well. But the common live CD which we generate supports almost all the platforms and flavors currently available in the market. Okay. I think that's it. No more questions are seen on the chat window. So that's great. So I think this concludes the uh, presentation from our side for this webinar series, and hope to hear from you guys soon on the feedback. You guys can provide us the feedback for this series, and if in case you would like to have any other topics covered in the following webinars, you could share it during the feedback, and that would really help us to share more information with our partners and resellers and customers. Thanks a lot. So you guys have a good day there. See you soon. Bye-bye.